Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's podcast episode of Modernization Accepted, which is a podcast hosted by Resolute Software. My name is Vesel Krylieva, and I am a Salesforce consultant here at Resolute. Today, I have a very special guest with me, Diana Tashkumar, who is a UX UI designer here at Resolute. Hi, Didi.
Hi, Missy. Thank you for having me here.
Very nice to have you on board today. So today's topic, everyone, is a very interesting one again. It's related to design and in particular design systems. And we're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. So Didi is here to shed some light on several topics. So let's start with the basics. Didi, can you explain what a design system is for our listeners who might be new to the concept?
Well, generally speaking, it's the single source of truth when building a software product. And what I mean by that, it usually contains all of the building blocks that the brand and the product may have. For example, if you have brand, probably you have a brand book with colors, logo, some rules. Also, you have maybe a style guide or any kind of guidelines. All of that combined actually is the design system. And well, ideally, it contains colors, spacing, typography, UI components, different UI patterns. And what I mean by that is combination between components, also layouts, and best case scenario, also code snippets. And of course, guidelines on how to how to apply all of that.
So can you say that this is somehow a recipe book for a good product that you need to have on board if you really want to succeed in any sort of product development?
Yeah, exactly. This is really well said. And actually, the point of having these guidelines is that this ensures the consistency. This consistency can be within one product, or for example, if a company has multiple products, then from one side, the end user knows that he or she is interacting with the same brand, with the same product, and also it's easier for the teams building it.
So it basically brings also consistent user experience for users.
Exactly.
Okay, so recently we did a podcast with one of our esteemed colleagues here at Resolute, Jana, on web accessibility. So I'm interested to understand more about how do design systems intertwine digital accessibility?
Well, they are connected. I would say that a designer should consider the accessibility when starting to build a design system, because it's a really easy and clear way to ensure that at least some things will be accessible. For example, to ensure sufficient color contrast between text and background, for example, in buttons, or to consider the font sizes, the weight, the spacing between the elements, the click area. For example, how big will be a button in a web-based app or on a mobile device, because it's different. And another thing that can be considered at the very beginning is the layouts also to be accessible. So yeah, to continue the topic that you discussed with Jana, it's a really nice thing to consider the accessibility at this point.
Yeah, and I think that this is something that companies commonly sometimes overlook. And it gets especially interesting when you have multiple products which are used on multiple devices. And if you don't have a good design system and you haven't thought about accessibility beforehand, it will come back to bite you at some point. So that said, of course, I would like to understand more about your view on how companies actually approach design systems. Is it really the case that they do this beforehand before actually starting to do everything? Do they invest enough time and resources into design systems? How do you feel about that?
I'm afraid that it's not always the top priority, especially when it comes to startups and new products and trying to approve a concept or something like that. But actually, the truth is that it's something that will save a lot of time and resources in the long run. And I would advise everyone to invest because it's an investment. It's not a necessary expense.
I guess the thing that you probably have seen most is where there's a startup that really is very dynamic, they're rather small. And I think that scale does affect both the design system and the accessibility topic and that matter. And maybe a lot of smaller companies do not see this as an important investment to make early on. But at the end of the day, I think if you want to grow, you need to have a scalable product, a design system in place so that later down the road, it's just a consistent user experience.
Exactly.
So we know that companies not always think about that. It's better to have a working product, I'm assuming, for them at least, which I understand that there are some positives, but at the end of the day, I think that having a design system in place is a very important investment to make. So, in terms of our approach here at Resolute, walk me through your working process. I'm really interested to understand how do we, as a team of experts, approach this.
Hello. Well, there are a lot of different companies that come to us with different products, different at different states of their development and size, etc. But actually, our approach is to always ensure we have a design system. Some of the companies that come to us, they already have one. So what we can offer them is to assess it and suggest improvements or add new components to it, to make it bigger and to evolve it. Other companies don't have a design system, so we can build one from scratch. And one other thing that I would like to mention here is that actually Resolute is partnered with Progress. So the Progress software, they have a design system. It's called Kendo UI, and we support this design system. And what I mean by that, we can use it as it is, or we can customize it in order to match with the product's brand. And yeah, actually, we have a white paper on this topic, and it's on our website. If somebody finds it interesting, it's easy to find.
Yeah, we're going to link this in the description. So, guys, if you're interested in the white paper, definitely have a look. It will be linked below. Interestingly, have you ever had a customer in your experience that you had a hard time convincing about having a design system in place?
I always use the design system. I mean, the truth is that for me as a designer, it's the way of how I work. So I cannot imagine to work without a design system. So even if I don't have a big one like Kendo, I always list the base like colors and typography and buttons, of course, and stuff like that.
Good to know. And that's really great to hear. And I'm assuming that when having a design system in place, I believe you mentioned it a bit earlier, the collaboration between dev and design usually, from my experience, goes better. So maybe you can shed some light there.
Yeah, sure. Just to mention here, having a design system actually is a good thing, not only for designers and developers, but also for products managers, product owners, marketing team members, and all of the stakeholders and the teams involved. But yeah, more specific between designers and developers, it ensures that we are on the same page. So having a design system, all of the designers that work on a website, for example, they know that the buttons have, for example, rounded corners, and then the developers, they also know that, and they also use that. And as I mentioned, it saves time. Why? Because we don't focus on finding inconsistencies and bugs and spending our time in fixing all of that. We have the basics, we have the recipe book, and if we follow it, we can focus more on improving the user experience and building new features and developing the product.
And I think that probably return on investment sometimes is immediate, but sometimes it has quite a few long-term benefits when it comes to design systems. And I think that it's obvious, pretty obvious, that both you and I agree on that topic. And we do have some sort of an agenda, I guess, which is absolutely normal. But when it comes to return of investments and in having a design system, give me some really easy examples of things that will come as a benefit from investing in a design system.
It enables the teams to be more productive. That's for sure. They don't focus on redundant tasks that repeatedly occur because of not having a design system. Yeah, if we build new features quicker, this means that the end users will be happier and the product can scale a lot faster. For me, this is the major thing. And of course, something that is really important for me as a designer is the visual quality of the product. I mean, this improves the user experience a lot.
Yeah, and I think that we've mentioned so far the scalability, and I think that that is definitely one of the things. I mean, I completely agree with you, but also scalability. And if you plan to grow, if you plan to expand, have your products be seen on multiple types of devices, you just need to prepare for the future in a way. Can you share some best practices when creating and implementing design systems?
Yeah, sure. The first one is to have one, of course. But the good practices are to actually collaborate with the other teams, and the collaboration between designers and developers is key. The last few years, the technologies the designers use have evolved big time. And actually, this enables us to work faster. And what changed is that actually the programs we use, they help us build our components the dev way. What I mean by that is, the way the developer builds the button, for example, the same way we build the button. So if in the past we just draw a rectangle and then wrote the text, it doesn't happen anymore like that. We have paddings, we have border that adds also to the size of the button. In the past, we just fixed the size with this rectangle, but now we can follow the logic behind the building it in the development. So I think this is a really good practice, because if the designers don't collaborate with the developers and build the components their way, they're going to make the work of the development team harder, which of course will cost time and resources for the company, and nobody wants that.
Yeah, so it sounds to me like it's not like the design team is solely responsible for the design system being in place, but it's a collaboration process, which then again provides additional easier ways to collaborate down the road. So it's kind of interesting for me to understand that the design team rarely works in a silo, which I think is great, because in this day and age, I've seen quite a few IT teams that work in silos and don't have good collaboration between them. And I think that maybe a design system being in place and being built the right way, just like you said, using variables, component constructions, which are, different type of ways which you can make your design system more scalable and easier to use going forward. So that's a very interesting concept. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see, okay, so we've said that it has quite a few return of investments and positives of having a design system in place. Can you name some of the challenges that you've seen when implementing a design system?
Well, some of the challenges can come from the industry. And what I mean by that is, for example, when it comes to healthcare, it's really crucial that we don't make mistakes because people's lives depend on our job partially. And yeah, I can give an example here. Some experts that work, for example, in X-ray rooms, they work in a dark room, in a dark environment. So we need to ensure that the contrast between the colors is sufficient enough. That, of course, it's a dark theme, so it's easier for to work with it. And this is just an example. We, of course, in that case, we need to consider the working environment of the end users, because the doctors and the lab experts, that they are not just a regular user that can switch the room and see better.
Yeah, and in essence, you need to put yourself in the shoes of a doctor, which I'm assuming is challenging if you don't have the experience or the knowledge. So you need to even kind of know what questions to ask, because to be quite honest, if you don't know that the lab engineer works in a dark room, you need to ask that question because it's pivotal to people's health at the end of the day, because your product needs to answer specific requirements. Can you give me more examples? I'm very interested to hear more about the healthcare industry, considering that it's pivotal for people in general.
I would like to add something here. One of the best things of my profession is that actually we need to gain this domain knowledge, and we need to put ourselves into people's shoes. And this is really interesting because we gain a lot of insights like that. And each time, we are better in what we do. Regarding your question, another big challenge here, speaking of healthcare, is that actually the target group cannot be put in a small box, so to say. I mean, the range is really wide, and you can have doctors from different ages, can have also IT experts that, for example, work in the hospital. So this is a totally different target group. But when it comes to a software product, we need to be consistent. So it doesn't matter if only doctors will use the tools.
I'm assuming it's a very, very wide range from
Really?
people of different background, people of different ages, people of different professions. So you basically need to be consistent, but then again, be mindful about who is your end user, which is not always the same person. And from one side, you need to be consistent in your design, but then again, you also need to provide I guess, more personalized user experience, depending on the case, which I'm assuming is a huge challenge for your work. And from what I can think of, again, the device issue, probably some doctors use like laptops or even PCs in that matter, or mobile phones. So it could be anything. So the sizing and the colors will matter both.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. The devices can be very different. And what I see recently is that this is the trend in all of the industries I've been working on. So even if you're in finance or law enforcement or healthcare, the devices are really important. But here, another disclaimer with the healthcare industry, actually, they're not only PCs, tablets, and mobile phones. Imagine that you have a huge scanner, and you have a screen, and the software that runs on that screen is that software that we are working on. So it can be really challenging with such devices because when we're not on site, we cannot test our concepts for design systems. It's really interesting.
Yeah, it sounds pretty challenging to actually test in real life environments because it's really complicated to do that. So looking forward, how do you see design systems evolving with the rapid pace of technological advancements? Are there any emerging trends or challenges that professionals should be prepared for?
As I mentioned, the design systems are a living thing, which means that they should be constantly evolving. And it doesn't matter if you're a new company or a company with legacy, so to say, you can always be up to date with the new things. And what I'm noticing is that design systems become more and more flexible, enabling the designers with all the tools that I mentioned, that we use variables, we use paddings, etc. This makes also the design systems very flexible to make, to change, to improve. We can add several color themes, not only, light and dark. We can have a pink one, a blue one, or whatever. Also, the responsiveness is really important. And if in the past we had to build everything from scratch and really slowly, nowadays we can be really responsive really fast because of these tools. And another thing that is really important and fortunately gains more and more popularity recently is the web accessibility. So we can see a lot of companies that have design systems built a long time ago. They make improvements in the direction of better accessible design.
So from one perspective, you're saying that it's a live thing and it evolves, but then again, the design systems are here to stay. So I'm assuming that that will continue. And I think that one thing that we also definitely need to mention is that at Resolute, we have great experts that can provide a very thorough UX assessment, which is basically a very effective method to detect usability issues and inconsistencies. So if you have a new product on the market, but you're kind of unsure that your design system is scalable or will it stand the test of time, you can always ping us and we'll be able to give you a helping hand. I'm also interested to understand, talk to me about personalization, because I constantly get kind of confused whether or not personalization, but then you have a design system in place. That's a very interesting push and pull concept that I'm not fully aware of. Can you walk me through that?
When I hear personalization in the topic design systems, I think here about being consistent again with the brand and to personalize the design system for that brand. Because let's be honest, all design systems have buttons and cards and maybe some other small components that they use, but it really should matter where you are. And for example, in Resolute, our buttons are rounded and point. It's really good thing to adapt the design system and not just to take something that is ready and made for generic use, because that way the brand will stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, and I think that when we talk about return of investment, really standing kind of in front of your basically competitors would be a much better way to do that if you have a proper design system in place. Well, Diana, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you for being a part of our podcast. Thank you, everyone who joined in and listening and watching this podcast. And then again, see you next time.